Chapter 1. Small Groups, the Heart of Society. So in groups, preview groups in your life, groups versus individuals as problem solvers, groups, small groups, teams, and small group communication, classifying groups by their major purpose, being an ethical group member, the participant observer perspective. Groups in your life. Groups as problem solvers. We encounter many problems, and knowing the necessary steps to effective solutions is helpful. Now, we all expect to be included in planning solutions to problems that affect us. Most of the planning occurs in small groups. So small groups is at the core of what we're talking about when it comes to this planning and working together. And realistically, this is something that starts from things that you learn from just working in your family as a small group. And as you pick up those things right there and you learn, you see it in other aspects as you work in other small groups and little cliques and little organizations and things along that. But this is vitally important to communication and working together in groups. So groups in your life, participating in groups. So you have tasks. Group members must understand and know how to work together towards goals. So when you have a task, if you have a group, everybody has to understand what their role is and work together for that task. Relationship, group members must manage interpersonal relationships. And when you have these groups, you will have the functional groups, the groups that work well, they have relationships with each other. They have relationships with each other, and it usually goes beyond co-workers. It's almost more like friendship. Communication. This means by which group members accomplish tasks and relational goals. The communication that flows between them. Sometimes I've seen it where you had groups that their communication is verbal and even nonverbal because they've gotten so good at working together. Groups versus individuals as problem solvers. Groups tend to be much better than individuals when several alternative solutions to the problem exist, none of which is known to be superior or correct. Groups make better decisions than individuals because they have more information relevant to the problem. The members often correct each other's mistakes and they think more options, and the group members are usually loyal to the solution they help make. So you heard that, one can do more than two. Two can do more than three, can do more than two. Two can do more than one, three can do more than two. So when you bring people together and when they come together for the right purpose, you bring in resources, everybody's experience, everybody's training, everybody's education. And when you're looking at something and you're trying to determine how to solve something, then that's the best way to approach, because obviously they have more resources, they have more experience collectively than they do as an individual. And they can look at the options and then they can weigh. They come up with multiple solutions and then they can kind of whittle it down to figure out which one is the best for. So problems appropriate for groups versus individuals. So if we look at it, there are times when it's best to have some problems handled by individuals, and there's some better to handle by groups. So let's look at for the groups. Some that's best suited for the groups. The problem is complex. One person is not likely to have all relevant information. There are several acceptable solutions. One best solution does not exist. Acceptance of the solution made by those who are affected is critical. Sufficient time exists for a group to meet and discuss and analyze. So when you have when you have people who give input, they're much more likely to have buy-in when you come up with something. That's one of the things that helps to have the multiple people there. But if they actually have time dedicated that they could spend and they could toss things around and play with them. So this is something that wouldn't be time sensitive. Basically, time is not of the essence. It's something that they have significant time or a long period of time where they can actually try to do this. Here's when it's not suitable for a group. It's better suited for an individual. When there's a best solution and a recognized expert is most qualified to determine the solution. Conditions are changing rapidly, such as during a fire or natural disaster, or coordination is best done by one person. Time is short and the decision must be made quickly. Group members have personal issues and procedures and they don't get along. So This is when the individual come in. It's a lot of times when you see stuff that's critical, it's particularly stuff that can be things such as imminent danger, life-threatening, or something very serious. You need somebody to make a call then, because you may not be saying, well, let me sit around here and wait till 4 other people come and then try to make a decision. Somebody could die or something could go very wrong. So this is when you would have somebody who is a SME, a subject matter expert, you may defer to and let him or her make the call. Group 3, a group, 3 or more individuals who have a common purpose, interact with each other, influence each other, and are interdependent. That's a group. Small group is a group of at least 3 people that is small enough for individual members to perceive one another as individuals during the interaction. Small groups usually consist of 3 to 7 members, with 5 usually being the sweet spot. Some people argue that there's a difference between a small group and a team. In spite of this, the terms are used interchangeably. You will find that when you see that, again, when you look at the group, there's 3 or more individuals who have a common purpose, intersect with each other and influence each other and are interdependent. So they're working together and they need to. And there is a sweet spot according to what the text is saying here. And I'll kind of agree too, based on my experience. Usually it's about 5 people. When you can bring 5 people into it and everybody has defined roles and you know what you're doing, everybody brings something to the table and therefore you can get things done. So communication, when we look at this, this transactional process in which people simultaneously create, interpret, negotiate shared meaning through their interaction. So the communication is vitally important. If you have bad communication, you don't have good communication when you have a group, realistically, they can't be effective. Just can't do it. Small group communication. Group members simultaneously send and receive verbal and nonverbal messages, words, facial expressions, and so forth to and from each other. And this is something that I've seen significant when I say I've seen people who've worked together for a long period of time. Their communication is not always verbal. Sometimes it's nonverbal, but it is communication. And through facial expressions or a nod or wink or whatever else, they understand what the other is saying. And when you see that, that's usually indicative of someone who's worked together for a long period of time. Most groups make use of technology to facilitate communication. And so when you think about it in terms of technology, most groups take advantage of that. One of the reasons why in today's society, many people who work in groups are not co-located, are not located in the same building. Some of them not in the same state, some of them not even the same time zone. So you have to have ways to find ways to communicate. Classifying groups by their major purpose. So this needs the underlying personal motivations. Groups are categorized by according to the main needs they fulfill. Inclusion. Do people working in your group or a group feel included? If they don't, I can show you somebody who's going to feel underappreciated and underperform and probably won't stay with that group very long. Openness. You actually have to have true openness. You have to have people where they're willing to say whatever it is that needs to be said and it can't be guarded. Because I don't want to hurt your feelings to tell you that this is not right. You can't have that when you have true openness. And when you do tell somebody something's not right, they don't get offended because they understand that, we're working together. We're trying to get the best out of the best result. And control, there has to be some type of control. And a lot of times it's a shared sense of control with these groups. It may not necessarily be a leader per se, but there's control within there amongst multiple people. So groups are classified by the reasons they exist. Primary groups formed to meet primary needs for inclusion and openness. So secondary groups formed to meet secondary needs, control. And so a lot of times no group is purely primary or secondary in its functions. I strongly agree with that. It's usually a combination of the two. Sometimes one can be more heavily primary than secondary or more heavily secondary than primary, but it is usually a combination of the two. Classifying groups by their major purpose, types of secondary groups. So you have support groups that help understand and address personal issues or problems. You think of like Alcoholics Anonymous or something along those lines would be something, a support group. They're not there to try to help you fix a problem. They're trying to help you. They're there to help you cope with the issues. Learning groups help members understand and control events in their lives and stuff. Learning groups could be groups such as what you have in university when you're in the classroom and you have learning groups. Organizational groups include any problem-solving group formed with the context of a larger organization. Committees perform a specific service for the organization. Self-managed work teams manage their own schedules. So when you have these organizational groups that are formed, they're formed for a reason, and they have a specific purpose. And you have sometimes you have committees who are actually, they make recommendations a lot, perform a specific service and make recommendations. You have these self-managed groups. They're people who are actually sometimes have their own budgets. They manage themselves and set their own schedules and deal with their own problems. Of course, they have somebody to answer to, but for the routine stuff, they just handle it themselves. Being an ethical group member. Ethics, standards, and rules for appropriate group member and leader behavior. Members must be willing to communicate and share ideas, information, and perspectives within the group. Gotta be able to do that. If you have somebody who's not willing to do that, then it hinders the effectiveness of the group, because one of the ways the group is going to be effective is by sharing all good information. Treat each other with respect and consideration. Nobody's better than anybody else in the group. Everybody's given the same group. Treat others as you want to be treated. Use critical thinking skills when they evaluate information, ideas, and proposals in the group. Bottom line, it's never personal, it's never emotional. It's always going to be critical skills designed because it's a business decision that you're making. Demonstrate commitment to the group, and people want to see, and I can tell you some of the ways that I'll give you just a way or two how you can tell when somebody's committed to a group. If somebody is actually being overworked or getting behind on something, will another person in the group step up to help them? If somebody's out one day, will others do the work that person would have been able to do? That's a demonstration of commitment to a group. Patients' belief about chronic health disorders. Nature of health disorder. Patients may adopt an inappropriate model for their disorder behavior. Cause of health disorders. Patients may blame stress, physical injury, disease causing bacteria, and God's will for the disorders. Self-blame can lead to guilt, self-incrimination, or depression. So when you have people who are going through things, you have to find ways to talk to them to address, so that address inappropriate behaviors and inappropriate thoughts. And some of these things that, when you find patients that's looking to place blame and stuff, this is why this happened to me, whatever else, that may not necessarily be the case. But one of the things that I found is it's always best to be truthful, but respectful when you're actually trying to tell them different and get them to understand. Because ultimately, you got to get them out of the bad headspace where they are. Being an ethical group member. The participant observer perspectives. Someone who is a regular member of the group and at the same time actively observes the group and adapts it to its processes and procedures. So when I see this a lot of times, this is where I look at it and say, a lot of times you see with new people who join a group. This is pretty obvious when you see with new people join a group, but you also have members of the group, even if they've been here for a period of time, that does this periodically because it does make good sense to do so. And that concludes this chapter.